Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Crash-a-thon, where I am quite literally going to be the Bandicoot's bitch for the next 3 months and go over every single one of his mainline series console games. And since last time we covered the original Crash Bandicoot, it logically only makes sense that we move on to the sequel. The original Crash Bandicoot was a fairly good linear 3D platformer, though I did feel that it was rather dated with stiff and jilted controls and jumping, and just some very frustrating mechanics. But not only did it set in stone a fun basis for a gameplay formula, but it also sold extremely well. About 6,820,000 copies to be more specific. So it was obvious the game resonated with people, so much so that Naughty Dog got straight to work on the next game. And literally just over a year later, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back was released. What is in my opinion the best of the original Crash Bandicoot trilogy. Not that you would know that from the game's advertising.
Wow, that was intense! Woo! I just flew in from the New Ruins level and boy are my arms tired.
Oh.
Whoa! Good thing I'm not wearing tight pants, because they would have ripped for sure.
I don't think I want to play this anymore.
That was funny stuff. Wow.
Crash Bandicoot 2 was in every sense a huge step up from the original, refining almost every aspect of the gameplay and level design like any good sequel should. The story starts quite literally where the first one left off. Cortex plummets from his fall where the impact would have realistically killed him, only for him to awake in a cave to find a power crystal, giving him an idea. After time skipping a year later, he along with a new colleague, Dr. Engine, have constructed a space station above Earth fitted with a mind control laser. However, in order to power it, they need 25 more crystals from the Earth, though seeing as they have no more minions left of their own, Cortex intends to use an enemy instead. Meanwhile, Crash and his sister Coco are relaxing on the beach when she asks him to go and get her a new battery for her laptop. In the middle of the fucking woods. But suddenly Crash gets abducted and taken to a mysterious warp room. You're contacted by Cortex, who tells you that he needs you to collect the crystals to save the world from being destroyed. However, Dr. Nitrous Brio, now working against Cortex, is sending forces to stop Crash from collecting crystals, while also trying to convince him to collect the gems instead. As is Coco, who is trying to contact Crash to warn him against trusting Cortex. Okay, yeah, to get this out the way, the story is fucking dumb. Honestly, it all boils down to the fact that they revealed Cortex's true motives to the player right from the get-go. So we already know from the beginning that he's bullshitting, and yet we just go along with it anyway when we already know how all this is gonna pan out. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. By simply hiding what Cortex was planning all along, it would have made for some conflict at least, as you wouldn't know exactly who to trust with 3 different sides trying to convince you. It's stupid, but honestly, not too much of a focus, thankfully. I mean, Crash Bandicoot is a franchise not particularly known for focusing on its story anyway, but also because it's the gameplay where Crash Bandicoot 2 really shines through. And when I tell you right now that I love this game, I'm serious. I mean it. It's the same gameplay formula as before, linear corridor platforming, breaking crates, avoiding obstacles, defeating enemies, all that good stuff. But it's made so much better by all the tweaks, innovations and improvements Naughty Dog made. Firstly, the controls. It feels like going from platforming with a bloody bulldozer to a smoother, zippier and so much more responsive style. Crash doesn't plod about the levels anymore, he glides through them effortlessly. The jumping is so much less heavy and it feels like you can actually control him while in the air this time. Honestly, the comparison between this and the first game in terms of control is night and day, it's that much of an improvement. But to also complement this, Crash's moveset has also been expanded upon. Crash can now belly flop to get rid of enemies and break these new locked crates. He can crouch and crawl under low gaps, but even better is the new sliding ability that also extends into a slide jump that allows Crash to jump both higher and longer. This move especially makes the movement so much more fluent and is not only encouraged throughout many instances in the game, but also allows as a way to shortcut and traverse the levels a lot quicker. Seriously, this game is smoother than butter rolling down a Bandicoot's arse cheek. And the controls aren't the only thing that's been expanded upon and refined. The mechanics and level design have all been tweaked to make the overall gameplay experience a lot more enjoyable. The bonus rounds make a return, term, but now simply as a platform that takes you straight to it, and it can be done multiple times over until you complete it. This time around though, they aren't a way to save your game and are what they are, a bonus. Simply to gather more Wumpa Fruit and lives, and to gather the boxes needed for the gem at the end of the level, which compared to the first game is so much less of a pain in the bollocks since you can now die and still get the gem at the end. Thank fuck. Instead, your reward for not dying in the level are these new death platforms, which only appear should you make it to that point without croaking it. These will take you on a much more difficult route with many more hazards in the way, but you will often be required to traverse these since these contain extra boxes needed for getting a level's gem, or they may even contain a bonus gem within the route as well. The colour gems, on the other hand, are now hidden behind secrets which you need to suss out to access them. Like for example, the blue gem is found by not breaking a single box in the first level and making it to the end. The red gem path in Snowgo is accessed by jumping on these boxes to reach this platform in Air Crash, and the green gem is behind this room of nitros and this fake door. They're not too obvious, but they're not too obscure either. There's always a subtle hint there to make you double take and think about something that looks a bit off or suspicious. And even better, gems and, as previously mentioned, the bonus rounds are no longer needed for saving the game, as you can now save anytime you want in the game's warp room, another new feature. This acts as your central hub from which you access each level, and while I don't think it has as much charm as the level select map from the first game, it does allow for more freedom in how you progress, with each of the 5 levels in the warp room being open to you at once and making it more convenient for you to return to previous levels quickly. Speaking of which, the levels themselves are fantastic. They're not as tight or restrictive as the first game, but they are more densely packed with more hazards, enemies and crates to compensate, and they are also well designed to accommodate Crash's expanded moveset. The levels also have more variety in them this time around in terms of platforming challenges and design. There's new platforming mechanics introduced in certain levels, like these hanging sections in the sewer levels or these digging underground sections in the B levels. The game also sees the return of certain level types, such as the levels in the dark, the chase levels, this time with many more obstacles and hazards to avoid, while also being chased by this monstrosity, and of course the animal riding levels, so much less stiff, faster, and way more fun than before, this time riding on Polar. Crash, buddy, we talked about this, the hog was one thing, this is just fucking sick. Please stop molesting animals, Crash.
I'm gonna fucking put my dick in the air.
But the game also introduces some new vehicle elements, like the jetboard sections within the swamp levels and the new jetpack levels, but they don't overstay their welcome or take away from the core platforming. There's only 3 polar bear levels and 2 jetpack levels, while the jetboard is spliced in between 3 of the platforming levels. It breaks up the platforming enough to provide a good variety in the gameplay, but doesn't feel like it detracts from the platforming. It manages to merge in very naturally here. I would honestly have to say overall, the game feels like the perfect incarnation of Crash gameplay. Simply put, it's about as solid as I was when Crash 4 was announced. Even the presentation in this game feels like a huge step up. It retains that rich level of detail in the environments, but just with that bit more polish. And it really shows more here with the wider variety of level themes, since this game takes place all around the world as opposed to strictly on the islands from the first game. It gave them a chance to explore new visual flavours and colour palettes, and it works really nicely. The character models as well are more refined, giving these characters what I would call their defining looks and even personalities. It's also the first time we got to hear Clancy Brown as Cortex. Yes, fucking seriously, the same guy who voices Mr. Krabs also voiced Cortex.
Sure, I suppose some would try and take advantage of this situation by selling them toys or candy.
But I cannot talk about this game's presentation without mentioning its absolutely killer soundtrack. Holy shit, Crash 2's music is by far the best music of the original trilogy. It's so punchy, memorable, and feels like it just does whatever the hell it goddamn wants too, while somehow perfectly matching the mood and tone and sheer quirk of each level. Joshua Mansell really kicked it up a notch, and honestly, nothing I say really can do it justice. I can only let you listen to it for yourself. it's so good, I love it! Well, now that I've sung this game's praises, I think it's about time for a reading of my favourite extract from Why Cold Hard Crash Can Eat My Arse. Okay, let's have a look, and there it is. Okay, as much as I have been kissing this game's arse, which I think is somewhat justified, I do really like this game after all, I do have to acknowledge that everything in life, nor indeed this game, can be all nice and diddly peachy now, can it? The game of course has its shortcomings, not ones that I would say ruin the experience, but ones that are still enough to make me go... Firstly, the ice physics. Oh dear lordy, it's like trying to will a bowling ball after you chuck it down a soapy slide. It's so damn heavy. Trying to stop and turn around on the ice requires you to do it way in advance of when you intend to. Also the fact that you can still carry the momentum you had even when you hit a dead-end wall, like... What? I specifically use Cold Hard Crash as an example because of its death route, caked in ice and tons of hard shit to avoid, which is necessary to navigate to the end and back in order to break all the level's crates, especially when it uses a lot of these, another new crate addition to the game, the dreaded Nitro crates. You wanna know what they do? Simple as really, you touch them, you're fucked. Another thing that really annoys me is the multiple occasions when it demands that you backtrack down split paths. It wouldn't be too bad if the camera actually zoomed out and allowed you to see what was ahead of you. It does this fine in the chase levels, so why not here? It's especially annoying when the game makes you backtrack in the dark, seriously. To be honest though, I can mostly ignore these things and brush them off. While they can make for some bullshit deaths, the rest of the game is so much more refined than the first, that I think the challenge this time around is entirely fair and down to you as opposed to stiff and restrictive controls. I can overlook them, but if there's one thing I don't really know if I can forgive Crash 2 for, it would have to be the boss fights. Yeah, they kinda dropped the ball on this one in my opinion. For the most part, the bosses in Crash 2 feel very lackluster. Firstly, you have Ripperoo, who aside from going through puberty, is really damn easy since he doesn't even attack you directly. He just leaves a trail of explosive crates and detonates them, giving you a chance to then hit him. I mean, I would still say it's better than his first fight, but that's not really saying much. The Komodo Bros are a piece of piss, seriously, their attacks are so slow it's baffling to think they could actually hit you at all. Tiny Tiger, to his credit, is probably the best boss in the game. He jumps on these platforms and follows your every move, so you have to lure him over the fallen platform so that he falls down. Fairly simple, though I do prefer the insane version of this boss due to its faster and more aggressive nature. Engine is okay I guess, but again, his attacks are so slow it makes it a cakewalk. And just before the final encounter and after gathering all 25 crystals, we get the quote-unquote reveal of Cortex's true motives. Oh my god, he was evil all this time. And then we get what I think is not only the worst boss fight in the whole Crash series, but one of the worst boss fights in any game, period. All you do is chase down Cortex, avoiding the rocks and mines to get close enough to spin him 3 times, and that's it. This is the final boss of the game, for God's sake. This is just pathetic. I guess it doesn't matter though, since as the game isn't as bollock-bustingly punishing as the original, I actually went through and got all of the gems this time for the 100% ending, in which Crash uses the gems to help power Embryo's laser to destroy the Cortex Vortex once and for all. Probably not an ending worthy of all the effort, but honestly, I don't mind. I enjoyed getting all the gems in this game because the gameplay of Crash 2 is just that fun and entertaining to me. While the original Crash set the foundation of the gameplay style for the franchise, Crash 2 really refined that style and ironed out all the niggles. And though while it created a couple small new ones in the process and didn't live up to expectations with the bosses, the game as a whole, to me at least, really was the best overall Crash experience of the original trilogy, and perhaps of the whole of the series platformers. It nailed the control style, level design and mechanics and found a great balance in its variety. So now we have only one game left to go from the original trilogy, so stay tuned next time for Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe if you feel like it.
I am not an animal. I am Crash Bandicoot.
And I will never psychologically recover from that.